Oh, this is fun. I don't want to do that. All right. Seem to have pressed a few wrong buttons here already. It's a good start. Well, this is fun. That's a default overlay. I already knew that. Oh dear. What, from where am I audible, I wonder? Let's see. Oh, I'm not live yet. Or am I? Ha ha! Am I? Ha ha! How about from here? How about from here? How about from here? That will go on forever if I allow it to. So it's not, oh, rude. It's not working from my microphone. So you can't hear it from this at all. That's so annoying. I don't know how to change that. It's not gonna let me either. Dang it. Let's see. Oh. Hello, hello, hi everybody. Welcome. Come on in. Unfortunately, oh, my microphone is not working in the way that I would have enjoyed. So alas, but that's okay. What can you do? Such is life. I'm actually a little bit early as well, so that's good in some senses. If you know me, say hello. If you don't know me, you're about to know me, because this session is going to be pretty jam-packed full of stuff. Hopefully in the future we will have more opportunities to do exam practice. But yeah, for now I'll just wait for you all to come in. All hundreds and hundreds of you. Leave me a message if you want to speak. It's so exciting, I know. I wonder when you guys have your exams. Are they soon? I want to know. I have quite a lot of students these days that have their exams like on Saturdays mainly. That's pretty common. Some of my students have exams in June, so they have plenty of time, which is great if they are here, because that means that they get to practice in advance, which is always fabulous. In fact, I'm going to share my screen so that you guys can see what we're going to be doing today. If it's going to let me do that. Lovely. There you go. Get a little look at that. See, I know what you might be thinking. You might be thinking, Emily, this is incredibly low tech. In which case you would be correct. You would be absolutely right about that. Oh, by the way, I'm sick today. So if anybody gives me any trouble, I will start crying. Thank you. Just this is free warning, all right? I've come nice and early to class. You know, a lot of students who know me will know that I'm often anything between 2 to 5 minutes late to every single lesson that I have. That's a skill issue on my end. I'm working on it. That's my New Year's resolution. But normally it's because I have back-to-back classes, you know, that's just how it is. Oh, it's nice to be here though, waiting for you all to come in. All 700 of you with exams coming up. I don't know if you've noticed on the little welcome panel there is a QR code. Um, that QR code takes you to a free consultation with me if you'd like to book a lesson, not really a lesson, an interview to get to know your goals a little bit better in English or to practice um, exam theory, all of these different things. So, on the menu today, we've got quite a few different things. Okay, we've got some resource tips, a list of resources that I'm going to give you for different exams. Um, Equally, we are also going to talk about study advice. So if anybody has any questions about study advice and they'd like to know what to do, please let me know. Okay. Um, then we're going to go through an example use of English test. I don't know if you've noticed, by the way, it says 1, 3, 4, 5 for each of the steps. That is because I am not an English teacher. Now, I just noticed that now. So if anybody says that in the chat, it was because I was trying to increase engagement. Wink, wink, if you know what I mean. Equally, we are going to have a look at some example use of English tests. We're also going to have a look at some example writing. So some criteria, all of these different things. Hopefully, it will be of use to you. And then, if anybody has any questions, we'll have our Q&A at the end. But I do appreciate that a lot of you will be studying. Oh, we have our first message. Hi, how are you doing? Good? I hope so. I'm so happy to see somebody actually sending me a message in the chat. If you have any grammatical questions, my friend, go ahead and ask. I do not want to scare you. You know, it's not my it's not my objective to scare you. But I'll tell you what, this is the first time that I've done this for my 10 years of teaching English as a second language. I've never thought to make my own stream. And now I understand why I've never done this because it's actually quite embarrassing. And looking at the number of people in the stream is making me really anxious. So I think I'm just going to stop looking at that. But anyways, so like I said, we're going to get right into it and get started with some resource advice, some study tips. You're from Bangladesh. Oh my goodness. It's nice to meet you, sir. I've never been, but I've heard it's very nice. So I digress. Let's get into it, okay? Well, the first thing that a lot of my students ask me about when it comes to exams and practice is where can I find practice exams? Now, ultimately, it is quite difficult to find free resources online if you want to practice a real exam. And it's even harder, actually, to find a way to have somebody mark that exam for you. So I can't really speak to every single exam, but I can give you some tips. The first one that I really like, and I'm going to scroll down a little bit here so that we've got some space. This is a document that I will make available to anybody who asks for it, by the way. But yes, let's make a little resource list here. The first thing, the first website that's pretty cool is this one. This is a Cambridge English exams preparation site called Engxam, Engxam. And if you are brave enough and you would like to practice the B2 or C1, or you want to have your own PDF version of it, then you can find it here. Okay. And look at that. You've got your own example test. Now, this actually, I can't show you the answers for this one because this is the one that we're going to use as practice for today. However, if I go back a little bit, there is a total of, whoa, there's loads. Goes on forever and ever, right? And the great thing about this website is that all of the answers are in the answer key, which is pretty nice, you know. We like free stuff in this house. I am definitely a big fan, you know. So, if you are looking to find B1 materials. This one's pretty B1, B2 materials. This website's pretty good. However, if you are a C1 student, equally you can find use of English activities here as well. Okay, so don't worry, you will never be without one ing exam. Although it's a little bit confusing because on some of the websites it's exam, and on some of the websites it's ing exam. However, the one that I am familiar with is ing exam. So let's put that in our resource list for now. Okay, that's our use of English for B2 and for C1. Now, the next one, a lot of students have asked me for some advice regarding this, and that is the IELTS exam. Is there anybody in here doing the IELTS exam? Any beautiful people worried about that? What do you mean there's only 3 of you? One of them's me as well. I'm actually using my tablet. I can show you. Hey. Actually, no, I can't do that. Never mind. It didn't let me do it. That's quite embarrassing. Well, I'm in here too, and I'm not taking an exam. So I'm assuming that the other people in here are pretty dedicated. And if you have a specific exam that you are doing, please, please, please put it in the chat so that I can perhaps help you with that. Okay. So equally important to note, I am sick today. Here's a fun fact for you. I teach very young children, and something that young children have not learned yet, I'm working on it, is that when they cough, they should cover their mouth. They haven't quite learned that yet in my class. So instead of saying, like, excuse me, they just go in my face. And that's why I'm sick. So if I mute myself every now and then, it's because I'm coughing my lungs up and I don't want, um, you know, it to drastically affect your ability to understand me. So what's the next site that I would recommend? The next site that I would recommend is for IELTS students, and it is called IELTS. And the problem with IELTS Buddy is that it can kind of bother you a little bit and ask you to pay for stuff and put different ads on your screen and things like that. But it is a very, very good website because it has practice tests. Yay, we love practice tests. I do, at least. I think it's good fun. And then you have different test types for different sections. It's all very nice and considerate. And also, something that is quite nice here is that you have sample answers. So if you're taking the IELTS academic test, for instance, it could be quite good to have a little look at one of these essay questions and then have a look at what the model essay looks like, and then compare your answer with the answer from the model and say, well, would I have written something like that? Would those types of words have occurred to me? Or is this much more difficult than I would have imagined? Or is this too easy? Do I need to maybe prepare myself for a higher level? That's also a possibility, right? Okay, so IELTS Buddy is really, really good. Anybody that's doing IELTS should probably go on this website, I would say. So let's add this one to our list of fun stuff. Okay, that's a nice one. So we have the printable PDF stuff and we have the IELTS Buddy. Nice. Okay. Now let's talk a little bit about other types of exams that could be occurring. Obviously we've talked about use of English. That is only one of the 5, well, technically 4 parts of the exam for Cambridge that could appear. So this one is for my Spanish fans out there. I'm sure that there are plenty of you, considering that I live in Madrid and I told every single one of my students to come. Obviously, a lot of them don't have exams though, so if you're not here, I'm not going to be super offended. And the next one is called Idiomium. We're going to take a little look over there for now. I love this website. And to be honest, as a teacher, this is also a pretty good teaching tool because it helps me put things into explainable words in Spanish too. So let's take a little look. Problem is with this website is that it doesn't like to load. That is an issue. I'm drinking coffee today, by the way, which is probably not a good idea actually, because it's 4 p.m. So if I continue to drink coffee, I might actually lose my mind tonight and stay awake for the rest of the evening. It's not good. I don't know why the website's not loading. Come on, this is your opportunity to shine, Idiomium. Why are you not doing this to us? How curious. Oh, it's happening. Hey, there you go. So, I really like this website, although I have to say, if you are the kind of person who just goes on Google and searches, how do I write an article? How do I write an essay? How do I... If you do that, then you will probably have a pretty hard time at finding this website because for some reason it doesn't really come up very often. Although, no offense to Idiomium, I think that the reason why that might be the case is because the activities are quite hard to reach. So I know that there are exam activities here, but then when I have a look for them, um, I can't find them. It's very strange. I don't know why that happens, to be honest, but it just does. So if you go over here, now I know if you don't speak Spanish, this might be a bit confusing, but this is just for my Spanish speakers. It's a little treat for you. But equally, even if you don't speak Spanish, you can still navigate your way, have a look at the solutions, and have a look at the main subtitles that are in English. It's quite good for writing. It explains in detail in Spanish what you're supposed to do in order to structure a writing properly, which is actually something that we are going to get into today. Um, but if you are looking for a lot of different examples, this is one of the best places to look. Okay, so I would recommend going over here and having a look at these activities if you are in desperate need of more writing. However, as a teacher, something that I have noticed is that I think if there's one thing that is very difficult to motivate my students to do, it is to produce writing activities in their own time. It's one of my biggest recommendations, and yet somehow a lot of students find it very difficult to get the energy to do this. I really, with all of my heart, I really, really recommend doing as much writing as you can. You know, it's just one of those things that is really rather important because it helps you with that natural fluency, and it also means that your speaking will be positively affected too. Okay, I just stopped sharing and I didn't mean to do that. Oops. Right, okay. So, idiomium is a really good one for exam theory. So let's stick that one there as well. And okay, let's talk about one more that could be good. Okay, this one's for grammar, all right? And I love this woman with all of my heart. I think she's fantastic. And I think that if I could meet anybody in the world, like a celebrity, I'd want to meet this lady. I'm going to share my screen now. She's fantastic. This is Perfect English Grammar. This is a website that I rely on quite a lot for student homework. Don't tell anybody. Don't tell her. Or maybe she'd be happy about it. I don't really know. But it's a fantastic website for grammar practice, specifically grammar explanations and grammar exercises. I think these are the two best things that this particular woman offers. Just give me a quick second there. Can you guys see my screen? Yeah. Okay, cool. Nice. So, yeah, I would strongly recommend going on this website for grammar practice, specifically for those really difficult grammar topics. Like, she knows what your problems are for grammar. Things like irregular verbs, passive voice, you know, the first, second, third conditional, the mixed conditional, these kinds of things. They suck. these grammar topics suck, but for some reason this lady, she just knows what she's doing. She knows how to put it into words, you know? She's great. And that's why you also need to watch and you need to pay attention to her. I don't think she has any videos. Let's have a look. This is just a random example. I think she puts an explanation. There's a PDF that you can download, review the explanation. There she is again. And you can even get a membership, which is like pretty neato, you know, it's pretty cool. So that's great too. All right, look at that. Oh, negative questions. Oh, it's disgusting. It's difficult grammar topics, you know, that's what she exists for. She's an incredibly helpful lady, and I can't stop recommending her for practically every grammar related issue that there is in the world. So, yeah, we'll stick her in there as well because she's fabulous. I think we'll definitely steal this link and we'll shove it in here. We love her. Okay. If you're following along, you probably won't really need the document after the activity is over. However, if you know, do want it, like I said, this document is available for people who contact us on Instagram. I will send the Google Drive link to anybody who contacts us via Instagram or contacts us via LinkedIn. We have a LinkedIn profile. Can you believe that? And nobody follows it because it's LinkedIn. No offense to LinkedIn, but it's LinkedIn. We also have a TikTok account. If you want to stalk us on there, feel free to do so. And is there anything else? I think, to be honest, those are the main ones. So, yeah, you know, if that helps you, then fantastic. Okay, we've talked about resources and we've only dipped into like a really, really tiny bit of resources. But equally, uh, we still now have to talk just a tiny bit about some study tips. So, I actually made a video recently about what my biggest pieces of advice in terms of study tips are if you have uh 24 hours before the exam. But I'm going to assume that the people that are watching today either have 24 hours left before their exam starts, or just a little bit more than that. I'm really hoping that you have more time than that. I know that this is a very rudimentary setup, by the way. It's a little bit basic and it might look just a tiny bit boring for a lot of you because it's not, you know, bright and colorful and has pictures of boobies and things like that. But regardless, this I hope will be incredibly useful for you. Now, study tips. I don't know if any of you have any more ideas that you can share with each other in the chat. I'm going to leave this video open so that anybody can write anything that they want. Um, but, you know, the idea is this. We're going to go through some study tips together. And then if anybody has any questions, which actually I believe we do have a question. IELTS listening section. Oh my goodness. Hi. How to stay focused throughout the test. Uh, Band 7, not higher. Section 203. That's how to stay focused. That's a really good question. You know what? Shall we, because you're the only person here, shall we see if we can get an example up and work on it together just for the time being, and then we'll come back to the plan. I think that might be a good idea. All right. Okay, let me stop sharing my screen for a second then. The difficulty when it comes to listening exams is that they are such a pain in the butt because it's so easy to get a headache when you're doing listening exams. For me personally, when I was doing my Spanish exam, I could do part 1 and 2, like it was like a 4-part thing. But then once it got to parts 3 and 4, I was just like crying, you know, because my head hurt. I couldn't maintain a sort of level of attention. Let's see if we can put an example question up on the board, and then I'll tell you how I would go through the section. Okay. All right, let's do section 2. I think that would be better, we'll use IELTS Buddy to help us. Oh, well, you can tell me, sir, if you've actually seen this one before because it's online. So just give me a quick second. Can I share my audio? Wonderful. Maybe we can listen to it together as well and try to answer the questions. Okay, so here we go. I can't remember for the IELTS exam. Do they give you any time to have a look at the questions first, or do they go right into it? I think they give you like a few seconds, but you don't get a lot of time. Can you guys see these questions? I hope so. Uh, it's taking some sweet time to load for me. There you go. Okay, cool. So, yeah, that's frustrating, isn't it? One second, maybe it's taking a moment to load. Can you see it now? No? Fantastic. I don't know why it's been so slow. I promise you that in the future I will set this up in a better way, right? But okay, let's take a look at this example. Obviously, this might not be ideal for you, but hopefully for everybody listening, this will be a useful thing to practice. So, um, what we have here is just without even understanding the context, we can have a look at the questions. So, we have a multiple choice activity with 3 answers, which is nice. We also have a really nice ad on the right about sleep apnea. It's not me, but could be you. All right. So the number of permanent staff, the company expanded in, most volunteers joined the program. These are all examples of anchors. I call them anchors. And what I mean by that are kind of expressions, vocabulary, and topics that could get your attention in the context of the listening exam. So, for example, in this particular case, I think what you're describing here is this feeling of like fuzziness that you get when you're doing a listening test. That you start to listen to the audio, and even though you know all of the words, you just think like, "Oh, I can't do it because I can't, they're not coming together and the meaning isn't making any sense," right? So, obviously, for section 2, and I think that this is certainly the case for practically any exam at any level, is that they are trying to trick you. And for the IELTS exam as well, it's the same for everybody at every level. So the level of analysis that is required for a, band 8, 8.5, 9 is so much higher than somebody who just needs like 5.5 or 4 or whatever, right? So, inevitably, maybe these first questions might be quite easy, but the ones in the middle might be a bit more complicated, especially in this particular case. Lots of people who do the Cambridge exams might find this part quite familiar because you have to choose your own answer to the question, right? So, I think that what we should do together is listen to an example activity, listen to this audio, and then see if we can answer the first 4 questions that were at the top here. Okay. And then see if we can complete the activity 15 to 20. What do you think, guys? Does that sound like a good idea? Might as well practice it together. You know? Okay. So I'm going to give you all a minute to read the questions. It's quite frustrating because I can't fit everything in. I think these bits are the easy bits, but then the table is a bit harder. Okay. When the question has ended, or when the number 14 has ended too, I'm going to stop it there, and then we'll go through the answers together as well. Okay. And then for the table, to be honest, I think it would be a good idea to maybe spend some time on the table some other time because I want to make sure that we do everything that's in the list of things that we have to do today. However, we will be coming back to this topic for certain. So let's listen, shall we?
IELTS Buddy Listening. Section 2. You will hear a woman talking to a group of students about volunteering opportunities with her company, Time Abroad. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 14.
Hmm.
Now listen and answer questions 11 to 14.
Okay, everyone. Thanks for coming today and for your interest in volunteering abroad. For those that don't know much about our company, Time Abroad, let me start by telling you a bit more. Time Abroad is one of the largest volunteer abroad organisations in the UK. The company was founded in 2000. In 2007, the company grew by joining with another company, PT Travel, making us even larger. In 2014, we sent 10,000 people abroad on a variety of service projects and internships overseas, more than any other company. All participants receive the best support from our full-time professional staff to ensure that the experience is safe, worthwhile, and fun. We have lots of very experienced staff working for us. We have around 150 full-time staff members, many of whom are former volunteers themselves, inspired by their own experience. Some of these people are even part of the original groups of volunteers back in the early.
That's enough. We're finished. Okay. We've finished the first four questions. Okay, so let's listen. Let's listen. Let's talk about the answers. Does anybody want to tell me the answer to number 11? If you do, that would be cool. I saw some flutters in the chat that people have deleted their own messages out of fear. And I don't think that they should. Now, I initially thought that the answer was 2000. And then I had to double check the question because it was trying to trick me, as it often tends to do. The company was founded in 2000, which was what was said, and we'll have a look at the transcript together in a second. But the reality is that the answer for number 11 was 2007. And we can have a little look at the old the script. Oh, yeah, we'll have a look at the script. Take a look at this. Time Abroad is one of the largest volunteer abroad organizations. It was founded in 2000 and in 2007 it grew, which is a synonym for expanded. Now, the difficulty is in these tests is that they try to get your attention. And even to me, you know, my basic lizard brain, I go, oh, it's 2000 because she said the word 2000. And then I don't listen to anything else, and my brain actually stops processing the information at a certain point, because I think I have the answer. And what you are effectively telling your brain to do of like, no, you have to comb through every detail and doubt yourself. Um, it's why you get so exhausted, right? So that previous question that I had of why am I so tired all the time? Um, it's because of that. Okay. Now the next question. Let's go back. The question was, the number of permanent staff, how many are there? This was an interesting question, because really it sounded like the number 75 might be the answer, but I believe that she said that 75 is the number of people who are temporary. Right, so she actually says a lot of different numbers here. She says all of the numbers that are in the options. 150 full-time staff members, which are equal if they're full-time, we can assume that they are permanent. But yes, oh, that's it. They're not that 75 are temporary, but 75 are not in the UK. And then the word 90s was used as the year, the decade, right? Now, naturally, in this kind of situation, your first instinct is to go with the first number that you hear and then doubt yourself and go, oh, no, I don't actually think that's the right answer. But what we are looking for always, and it's the same for the reading as it is with the listening, is evidence. Can you hear specifically the evidence in the audio that makes it certain that it is not answer C, or it is not answer B, and in fact it is answer A. Okay, so yeah, in this case it is C, but it's really good to do those processes of elimination to say, well, I know that it's C, I know that it's 150 people, um, but how do I know that it's not 75 people? And it was because in the audio I explicitly heard her say 75 of them are not in the UK, which is not connected to the question. Number 13 then. Anybody brave enough to put their answers in the chat? I totally understand if you don't want to, because like when I was a kid, I'd be too scared to do things like that. Now they talk about the opening times, so the availability and what times people tend to join. Some join in July because they just finished studying. Some of them join in winter because it's popular, because people want to escape the cold weather. But the answer is that there are no set start dates. Programs are continuous. So the majority, which is another way of saying most, of students start when it is best for them. Okay, that means then that the answer must be C. So if you got it right, give yourself a tick. Okay. And then finally, Time Abroad receives all its income from, well, maybe if you saw it transcript here, all our work is 100% funded through your contributions as a volunteer. So they require donations, contributions, not other people to give them stuff. However, they were trying to trick you there with that first part. It's entirely independent, doesn't receive funding, and then it starts listing all of these different organizations and sources, which makes you think like, oh, maybe it's one of those because it was in a list, right? And maybe it just happens to be one of those. Um, it's really difficult to shift through all of the details in an answer in a list in a excuse me, in a listening exam to find the answer. So I want to give you some tips on what I would do if I was in your position and I was doing the listening exam. Okay, so let me go back to sharing my screen. And we'll go by study tips really. So the first thing that I would do for listening is I would go on YouTube and listen to me. I'm just kidding. I would not do that. That would be kind of boring, actually. The first thing that I would do is go on YouTube and I would find a C1, B2, maybe even C2 if you're trying to get into higher bands like 8.5 or 9. And I would have a look for the playlists that have those answers in. Like there's one for B2 that's made by the YouTube channel called Viet FCE. It's a really, really, really good playlist. And it's a good way to just practice and get used to not necessarily the tricks, because I mean, the whole point of these exams is that they really want to trick you. But a really good way of getting used to the structure of the questions, the way the interviews are organized, the way each question is divided, the spaces and the pauses between each of the audios to kind of indicate when the next question is starting. It's a really, really good idea to practice with these playlists. Let's see if I can like paste a little example one in here. The problem is nowadays as well, I'm so sorry. The problem is with a lot of these playlists is that they are now being sort of slowly destroyed by AI, and it's not really very easy to find them. But this is an example of a B2 one that you might want to have a look at. Now, equally, when you are studying listening questions, the first thing that I would do is, and I'm sure you've heard every teacher say this to you, but when a teacher says highlight key words, they are not saying just pick all the adjectives and all of the nouns and all of the things that sound like they might be connected to the topic. That is not what the teacher is saying. So if I was to steal just a little example from a B2 question of what that might mean of highlighting a key word, let's take a look at a question together. You might have more than one keyword, especially if it's multiple choice. Okay, so let's take a look at this one. You hear a teacher talking to her class. What is she doing? A, explaining the results of a competition. B, thanking them for taking part in an event. And C, encouraging them to complete a challenge. So what are our key words here? If anybody's got any ideas? I'm just going to take a look at the chat for a second. Yes, you can. Sorry, I didn't see that. Yes, you can provide an example if you have one. You can send it to us personally if you want. We can give you some advice like that. That's absolutely fine. Yeah, all right. But if anybody can think of some keywords for this question. You hear a teacher talking to a class. What is she doing? Explaining the results of a competition, thanking them for taking part in an event, or encouraging them to complete a challenge. It's like Dora the Explorer, really. I have to go, what do you think? And then hope that somebody responds in the chat. It's dicey. So, I think some key words include the fact that in the three options, A says explaining results. And in fact, explaining might not even be that important. I think the fact that, I think results is probably the main thing. Is she talking about the results? Because explaining, talking, it's all the same thing. B, does she say thank you at any point? Thanking them and then taking part. So like, okay. Is it about participation? Is it about saying thank you to these people? Excuse me, I'm dying. And C, encouraging them to complete a challenge. Okay, the whole point of these exams is that you might not know what encouraging means. If you do know, then that's great. But this is a great example of what would you do if you don't know what encourage means. Encouraging them to complete a challenge. Let's try and do what we did with explain and just replace it with the word tell. Telling them to complete a challenge. It's practically the same thing, right? To do a challenge, right? Keep it nice and basic. If I had the time, I would make these notes in my first language, right? And the reason I would do that is to make the connection of the question to the audio to my brain, so that I'm not just doing a listening exam, I'm connecting it all to my first language. And by connecting it all to your first language, it then all starts to make a lot more sense. I think a lot of my students think I'm crazy when I tell them to do more, um, you know, first language stuff. Really, if you operate in your first language, this is the best way, in my opinion. Okay, so step one is this, right? Step one is highlighting your keywords. Now, we have to appreciate that when we actually listen to this part of the audio, we are not going to hear necessarily these exact words. So step two is to, like I said, putting it in so you could translate it. Wait, translate into your own language to help you to support your understanding, or you could find some synonyms. Okay, because it's highly likely that when you're listening to the audio is not necessarily going to use exactly the same words as what the question says. So the teacher might not say something like, "Hi guys, I would just like to say that I would like to explain the results of a competition." It's not going to happen like that. It's probably going to happen like this. Okay, guys, listen up. We finally got the scores of the competition. This team scored 20 points and team B scored 30 points, which means that team B won, right? That's what you're going to hear. So instead of trying to differentiate, or instead of trying to search in your head for the words that are in the question, it's going to help you a lot more to think about some synonyms or start activating that vocabulary in your head. Um, teachers call it activating schema, but it's just the same thing. You're activating vocabulary in your head to prepare for the audio. Okay. Another thing, this is just another piece of advice for listening, is that curiously, intonation can be helpful. So, for example, sometimes some of the questions are not necessarily related to, oh, what is he saying or what is she saying? It could be that you're having to answer a question based on how somebody feels. Or what's their opinion about this? Or what do they think about X? Or what do they think about Y? So, equally, gosh, let's have a look at this example. You hear two friends talking about a TV program they have watched. What does the woman think about it? Um, I like to think, just from looking at these answers here, it contains some useful tips. Well, if a woman in the audio thinks that, she's probably going to say something like, "Oh, actually, I find it really useful," right? With that kind of intonation. Um, B, it raised surprising arguments. Well, whoa. And C, I've just realized this is devolving into utter madness. And C, it discussed interest in new research. Wow, yeah, I didn't know about that. This is new for me and I had no idea. Right? Um, I remember there was one question that I saw that was like, "Oh, how does she feel about it? Is she happy about her neighbor? Is she suspicious of her neighbor, or is she in love with her neighbor?" And I was like, "Whoa, there is such a big difference between those three emotions." And it turns out she was suspicious because she thought that her neighbor, like, came from a bad background or something like that. And you could really obviously tell from the way that the woman was speaking in the audio that she wasn't really into the idea of having this new neighbor. So, yeah, absolute madness, really, if you think about it. Sometimes you can just gauge an answer from the intonation. But that's not going to happen every single time. Least of all when you get to higher levels like C1, C2, if you're preparing for proficiency, if you're doing language C1, if you're trying to get into higher bands in the IELTS exam, it's most likely that you don't just rely on intonation to get the answer right. Um, However, there is one more thing, one more piece of advice that I really like, and I find this incredibly useful for listening exams, for when I have to do listening exams. Guess the answer before you listen. Guess the answer, right? Do you hear two friends talking about a TV program they've watched? What does the woman think about it? I think she thinks it's like cool because it's new. Congratulations, you create a bias, you know, because you already have developed an idea in your mind of how the woman is going to respond, um, that is either correct or incorrect. You know, you create an image in your mind of what the woman or the man in the audio is going to say. Then when the woman says that thing, it's like, oh, lucky, haha, I was right. But if you realize that she's not doing that, she's saying something different, you can go, oh, actually, no, that totally goes against what I'm saying. It's useful because it means that you're not going in empty-handed. You're not starting the audio without any previous knowledge of what could be happening in the conversation. Instead, you're going into the audio with a preconception of what could happen, and you are willing to be proved right or proved wrong. Proven. Proven right or proven wrong. English teachers don't always get it right, okay? That's just the truth. So that's something that I would do. That would be my greatest recommendation for you guys is to guess the answer before you listen, just in case, just in case um the question is so tough, but you understand the question and you really want to make sure that you get it right. So coolio, guys. Good job. Listening sucks. I want to go into some other actual study tips though, if you don't mind. Listening's tough. I hate to be mean about listening, but it is really, really difficult. So I feel the pain of everybody who is collectively doing listening tests. My thoughts and prayers go out to all of you. Okay, so study tips for real. We'll move away from for real, as if the listening ones don't count. We'll move away from listening for now. Maybe we can do a listening live. I don't know why that sounds funny to me. A listening live, like a live where everybody just sits and listens and nobody talks, right? So let's do a little bit of study tips, study advice, some things that I would like to impart to you. Like I said, I already have a video about this on our feed. That's very short, but I'd like to go into some more detail about some of the things that I said in that particular in that situation, in that description that I gave, in that thing that I said, in that video that I did. My God. Sorry, forgive me. I am also trying to operate on like 14 coffees and 2 hours of sleep. So let's start with the first thing that I said that you should do is make a list of grammar that you are confident to slightly confident to not remotely confident about. I call these traffic light lists, Make a traffic light list. So, for example, I might make a nice little table like like this. I'm just going to do an example here where I have like the grammar. And I might put a little example here, and then I might put like feelings on the end. So I'm going to put for like the present simple, easy. I'm just going to like highlight it and say that it's just easy peasy. This is not a spreadsheet. So I'm going to write easy, not in red though. Hello, am I stupid? Green. Green is for easy, right? Green is for easy, not red. And then I might put an example, just something to make sure that I understand coming back to the list that, um, I know what grammar topic that is, because sometimes like you might make something like this and then come back to it and then be like, what? What have I written? I don't know what that is. What's the present simple? Oh, sorry. I don't mean to cough in your face. I'm trying my best not to. And then you might have something like, I don't know, the second conditional, and you might think, oh, I don't know. I don't know. I might be unsure about that one. I might have to come back to that. And then I might write a little example for myself that says something like, if I were rich, I would buy subscribers, you know? But yeah, so if you're not sure about it, maybe it's something that you could come back to at some point. Equally, we might have something that is just completely out of the question. My favorite example of this is the passive voice, like uh, subscribers have been bought to increase the popularity of the channel. I don't know why I'm outing myself like this. Promise I haven't bought any subscribers. It's just funny to say. Um, but yeah, so maybe you might be thinking, "Oh God, the passive voice. I have no idea." So I'm gonna write it here and then I'm gonna come back to it, right? It would be my greatest recommendation to you to ensure that you make a list of grammar. Now you can find lists of grammar anywhere. If you're really lazy, you can ask ChatGPT, give me a list of all of the topics that I should know for B2 or C1. But really, you could go on the IELTS buddy thing, or you could even, if you remember, you can go on Perfect English Grammar and you can just make a note of all of this grammar. And then just stick it in your table and then that's it. Wow, I know. I'm so helpful. I know. Okay, so that would be my first piece of advice. If you've got plenty of time before your exam, that is a really good thing to do. Now, for grammar, that's, one kettle of fish. The other kettle of fish is vocabulary. Now, here's what I like to do. I like to make a list of all of the different topics that come up. I'm going to make another one of my fancy tables. Okay. I didn't mean to do that. And I'm going to put on the one side vocabulary topic, and then on the other side I'm going to put vocabulary. Okay. And then I'm going to make a list of all of the different things that could show up in my exam, that are the typical kinds of things that show up, because it just is one of those things that, it's just like the facts of life. For vocabulary topics, these are like especially if you do the first for schools, which I know some of you are doing out there. Oh, I know, you know. This kind of thing just shows up all the time. School related topics. I actually don't think they're allowed to ask you anything that is not connected to school. So it is a cert. It is certain. Okay. So vocabulary related to technology then. I want you to be able to think about, or to be able to come up with, which is like to invent in your brain. I want you to be able to come up with 10 words or expressions related to each topic. And I want you to be able to do that on your own. I don't think that you should need any help to do this. You should just be able to come up with stuff of your own volition. Okay, so let's do some examples. Technology. When I think of technology, I think about my mobile phone, think about my laptop, but I also think about logging into stuff and logging out. And I also think about my password, maybe my username, which is the grammar police. Maybe I think about my my subscribers. Sorry, I know I've used subscribers as an example enough times. All right, I'm just kidding. I promise I'm not a shill. Um, what else could we think of? The screen. I'm typing on keys right now. Maybe I could, if I was really, really high level and I wanted to talk about like the blue light effect. Or blue light syndrome, where people find it difficult to sleep because they're addicted to their phones. Um, I could talk about addiction. I could talk about social media. How far am I going here? It's going on and on, right? It's nonstop. And how many do I have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I have 12. So, guys, I'm just saying, if my ability to activate vocabulary in this particular topic is quite high like this, then that's how I know that I'm doing pretty good in that particular subject. And if it shows up in my exam, I should be feeling quite confident. On the other hand, if I'm finding it really difficult to think of words or expressions or maybe phrasal verbs or basically anything connected to a certain topic, maybe now is the time to read an article and highlight some words connected to that topic. Um, Make a Quizlet, make a flashcard list, um, write them down. And, this is something that I do. I have like post-its. I don't know where my post-its are. They're probably on the table behind me. And if there's words that I find really difficult, I write those words on my post-its and then I stick them around my walls. And it makes me look like a crazy person, but I think it's a really good idea to remember vocabulary. Okay, so that is something that I would pretty strongly recommend. All right, so another thing that's really important here is that, okay, you need vocabulary, but it doesn't have to be super sophisticated, fancy, crazy vocabulary. If it's B2 especially, you just need to be understood. So for example, things like school and maths and English and science and teacher. These are all examples of terms that if you can use them correctly in an exam setting, then that means that you have pretty good natural fluency, okay? So I know it might seem a little bit like, but Emily, it's not fancy enough. It doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be really fancy, okay? It just has to be said. You have to speak it. And so long as you speak, then you will be fine, okay? Cool. So, obviously, there are more than 4 topics. Again, this is another, you can use AI to tell you how many topics there are, but you could equally just go on the video that I just told you about and have a look at the ones that I put there. Okay. Not that I'm trying to force you to go there, it's just because if you put a gun to my head right now and told me every single vocabulary topic that I mentioned in that video, I cannot remember. Okay. Grandma's got memory problems. All right. Cool. Any questions so far? I'm just kidding. I don't expect you to have any questions on account of the fact that there's 2 people in here and one of them is me. The other one might also be me. I hope this is helping. Or actually, we're an hour in and we're behind, so we really need to get a move on. Because if I remember correctly, my God, I'm so sorry. I keep coughing in your face. Yes, that's right. We need to go back to our example use of English test, which is what I wanted to do with everybody today. However, judging from the amount of people that are in the room, perhaps I will save some of the activities for a later date. It's possible. And if we do get any questions about grammar, today I'm especially a fan of talking about grammar. If anybody has any grammar doubts, please let me know, because I would love to talk to you about them. Okay. Taking a little break for my throat, you know? Sometimes when you're a teacher, you don't appreciate just how much time you spend screaming at people, you know? I am really sorry. I'm trying not to cough in your face. I promise you I'm doing my best. It's just not going very well. Um, I wonder if there is a way to like automatically mute. You know what I think it is actually? Because this isn't working. If I had this, I could just like mute it and like prevent it from making me cough in your face. But instead of doing that, now I just have to cough in your face. I'm really sorry about it, It's quite shameful. So, we've talked about study tips. We've not gotten through the other half of our study tips. So I think what we're going to do now is have a look at some speaking practice, the other half of the study tips that I would recommend the most. And then we're going to do an example practice of, depending on how much time we've got, I think we'll do writing. Think. Yeah, I think so. So we'll do that. Okay. Wow. All right, let's continue then, shall we? Maybe next time I will improve my what would the word be? Production value. That's it. Okay. Next one. Our next topic for study practice. So you've made a list of all of your grammar. You've made a list of all the vocabulary. You've got an idea of which vocabulary topics you should focus on the most now, which is really great. And my next piece of advice, which is a little bit unhinged, is talking to yourself. Talk to yourself, right? Think about all of the different example videos you've seen of the exam so far. I'd like you to go back to those videos and pause one of them, okay? When the examiner asks a question and answer the question, okay? And then let the video play and compare your answer with the answer of the person in the video. Was your answer better? Was your answer worse? Could be a good idea, a good method to compare yourself. My success as a Spanish speaker depends practically exclusively on my ability to talk to myself. My study experience when I was in college consisted of me talking to a mirror, and then I did my exam and I passed it. So that's what you need to do with English. Don't be afraid to talk to yourself. All right? I believe in you. Just talk to yourself. Now my next piece of advice regarding writing, okay, is to write lesson plans. Okay, writing lesson plans is a really, really good way uh, to plan and to structure your answers to things, but also to understand what the examiners are looking for. So that's what we're going to talk about now. All right, we're going to talk about what examiners are looking for, and then we're going to go through an example question, and it's going to be beautiful. You're going to love it. It's going to be great. Okay, so let's see if we can steal an example of a. We'll do B2 because I think that was the first thing that I said in or the first thing that I put in the poster of writing. If anybody has an example of a writing question that they would love, love, love to practice, please put it in the chat. Maybe we can get round to that too. But I'm going to rely on my best friend, which I've told you about on multiple occasions, which is Exam, to find us a nice example. Also, just as a reminder for people, something that I would like you all to know is that if you do a writing exam and you're struggling to find somebody that will mark it for you because they want loads and loads of money, or because they are an AI and they don't really know what it is that you need, please send it to us. And by us, I mean me. I will do it. I don't know why, I just really like marking people's writings. As a teacher, I often ask my students to do writing as homework, and they hate it, and they hate me because I ask them to do these things. Um, but you have to, it's just what the process is. You need to practice writing in order to feel confident and to manage your time better when you do your writing exam. It's really, really important. So let's get going, shall we? In your English class, you have been talking about the environment. It's the most boring topic in the world. I'm just kidding. Well, It's a topic that we have dealt with on so many occasions that perhaps it's quite easy to go through each of the keywords, the vocabulary, things like this. It might not be super difficult for you guys. But for me personally, this topic is just like, ugh, boring. No offense, no offense. But yeah, let's have a look. Write an essay using all the notes and give reasons for your point of view. Every country in the world has problems with pollution and damage to the environment. Do you think these problems can be solved? Write about one, transport, two, seas and rivers, or rivers and seas if you can read, and three, your own idea. Okay, now I'm going to introduce an essay structure to you all today that perhaps will either revolutionize your entire life, make you question everything, or that you will abandon because you'll find it really, really boring and not useful at all. But first of all, we need to get started with our parameters. What is being asked of us? The first thing is that this is a B2 essay, so this is going to be 140 to 190 words. Okay, we have to write about 3 different points and do an introduction and conclusion. So somehow, magically, we're going to have 5 paragraphs. I don't understand why they give us such a low rate, you know? And I want you now to think about a couple of ideas that may come into mind for that third section there. Because it's an interesting one here that we already have transport taken up for us. Rivers and seas is another one. What will be our third idea? So I'll give you a minute to think about that while I cough a little bit into my microphone and blow my nose really, really loudly to bust your audio. This is the stream, you know. This is if anybody misses this, it's completely on them. Anyway, so I'm trying not to cough. I'm trying not to cough. It's actually try not to cough challenge failed, you know? Anyways, so like we said, it's 140 to 190 words. It's going to be about 5 paragraphs, but that introduction and that conclusion are going to be quite short. And what are our key words? Ooh, problems, problems, pollution, damage, environment, you know. The question is essential too. Do you think these problems can be solved? Before we do anything and before we go into what exam structure or essay structure should look like here, we need to make sure that we answer that diggy dig dog dang question, okay? Do you think these problems can be solved? So I'm going to be super negative today and I'm going to say no, no, I don't think they are. No, no, wait, no. Okay, that is the opinion that I am going to carry with me now until the very end. That means that all throughout the essay, it's going to be no, 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 no. A lot of my students, particularly my teenagers, say things like, it depends. And my issue with it depends is what does it depend on? And also, you're going to have to keep mentioning that throughout your essay. That sounds boring. Don't do that, okay? That sounds like a lot of work, if that makes sense, okay? So let's make sure that we are consistent. Let's make sure our introduction, body, paragraphs, and conclusion all have the same message, right? You will be repeating this many times throughout your essay. A lot of people tell me, but Emily, the answer to the question in the essay is only done in the conclusion. And I go, oh my God, shut up. Okay, maybe I don't do that. Or maybe I, get really angry and start punching people. I'm just kidding. I don't actually tell my students to shut up, I promise. It was just a joke. Um, but it is still really, really important that you don't leave that answer to the question for the very end. What do you think this is? An unboxing? What do you think this is? A YouTube video? Or tune in at the end for my surprise actual answer to the question. You have a job to do in this writing exam. The job that you have to do is answer the question. So what's the point in writing the rest of the essay if the only part of the essay that answers the question is at the end? Hello? Sorry. I don't mean to get preachy, but this is something that is incredibly important. That answer to the question will appear many, many times. Okay, so that's number one. Number two, we have to make sure that we create ourselves a little essay plan type situation. Okay, so we make an essay plan. You might be thinking, "But Emily, what the heck is my essay plan going to look like?" Well, I'll tell you. I'll tell you. Don't even worry about it. We're going to make a little table and we're going to pee. We're going to pee 3 times. Look at that. 1p, 2p, 3p. Maybe I can change the title of this video to clickbait if I go, "Oh my god, I peed 3 times." There's a reason why Anna doesn't join in with me on these videos is because she thinks I'm mental. So, you remember the question, can the problem of pollution be solved? You remember that? Do you remember that? Pollution, damage to the environment, do you remember? Good. Do you remember the points? One was transport. One was rivers and seas. And one was our own idea. Now we have to think about our own idea. I'm going to think of one, unless anybody in the chat's brave enough to think of one themselves. Now, I think that a hmm, good point here could be, you know what? Let's be topical. Temu. I don't know. Let's do it. All right. So, for this question, every country in the world has problems with pollution and damage to the environment. Do you think these problems can be solved? I am going to say no, these answers cannot be solved. And I'm going to talk about the topics of transport, rivers and seas, and Temu. Okay? Now you might be thinking, how am I going to incorporate Temu? Well, it's easy because I've peed 3 times. Well, actually, I've not peed just yet, but I'm about to pee. And I hope you're ready because it's going to be fun. I've got a really itchy nose. It's like my nose is aware of the cringe. I caught myself that time. I could feel myself like I was ready to cough my lungs out, and I held back. Okay. So, what's pee? First of all, shall we answer ourselves the question, what's P right here? P is point. E, the first E is evidence. And the final E is explanation. Now, what do I mean by any of that, right? P is the way that we are going to structure the body points of this essay. Okay, so that means that P effectively is going to help us explain how these answers, these points here, have got anything to do with that question. Do I think that the problems of pollution can be solved? If I think that the answer is no, then I'm going to have to find a point that has something to do with transport. Okay, I'm going to find evidence for that point that supports my opinion, and I'm going to explain how that point is connected to the question. So this final explanation here is interesting because a lot of my students tend to forget it, but effectively it is just answering the question again, reinforcing the no. okay? Or if you agree that, yes, I think these problems can be solved, then you are reinforcing the yes, okay? But either way, it doesn't really matter here. For the sake of today, we are, going on the negative side, but in the future, you might find that you might agree with whatever, and that's not a problem. Okay, so again, let's go back to our question. Before we even look at the body, we need to figure out what our introduction and what our conclusion is going to look like too, right? Okay, we've read the question like 700 times at this point, but let's read it one more time. Every country in the world has problems with pollution and damage to the environment. Do you think these problems can be solved? No. Problems with pollution and damage to the environment. Problems to the pollution and damage to the environment. Problems to the pollution and damage to the environment. I'm going to say in my introduction that the words that are being used here are actually quite complex. Pollution, environment, damage, all that kind of stuff. So I think that the first sentence that I'm going to give is going to be a definition of pollution. That's the key word that I think I might choose for this question. You could also choose to define um, damage to the environment. That's a bit vague. So you could choose to add some more information there by sort of in that first sentence saying pollution is slowly affecting our environment. So let's see. I'm going to make my own example here. Are you ready for this, guys? My B2 introduction. My first sentence. Pollution is caused by people and companies throwing rubbish into different natural environments, which affects animals. I'm being really vague here because you don't have to be really specific, okay? Which affects animals and destroys nature. Ooh, it's a little vague, but that's okay. Okay, remember, this is a B2 essay. Pollution is caused by people and companies throwing rubbish into different natural environments, which affects animals and destroys nature. Okay, that's my definition of pollution. That's going to be the first sentence of my essay. All right? My second sentence, which, by the way, this particular essay will only have 2 sentences, or this particular introduction only needs 2 sentences. The second sentence is going to be a sentence that goes like this. In this essay, I will, right? This is a great sentence because it tells the examiner what you're going to do. You need to tell your examiner what you're going to do. It's really, really important, okay? How is the examiner going to know what you're going to do if you don't tell them? How is the examiner not going to know what your opinion is if you don't let them know right there in the introduction? Okay? So, in this essay, I will explain why the problems caused by humans can't be solved. And then I can even, if I want to, I could say something like this. I could say, by discussing transport, rivers and seas, and popular companies like Temu. Right? These are my ideas. I can add that by saying I'm going to express this opinion through the method of these 3 points. That is like so beautiful because you're saying to the examiner, hey, I understand the topic, and you can tell because I did a little definition of the key word. And on top of that, I told you what I'm going to do in this essay. I'm going to say, no, it can't be solved. Answer the question, right? So, because I answered the question here, I'm actually creating a situation where the examiner knows exactly what I'm going to write about. So I put a little bit of pressure on myself. If I don't do this properly, and if I start to say, oh, it can be solved later down the line, maybe the examiner will say, that your grade needs to be changed. This is not a correct answer to the question because you are not consistent. Your argument is not coherent enough. However, I don't think that that's going to happen to you because you've told yourself in the introduction what you are going to do. Now, we have completed our introduction. Congratulations. This one's a little bit thick. No offense. No offense to our beautiful, our beautiful introduction there, but there are quite a lot of words, which is why this part is pretty much optional. But now we need to get into our P, okay? Which I can't believe I keep saying that. What's P? We're gonna go into our body text, okay? So let's do it. Are you ready? Before we continue, once again, I'm going to give anybody the opportunity to say anything, to type something to me if you're all too scared to type anything. I doubt it, but go off, kings and queens. I mean, if you're here on a Sunday and you're hanging out with your sick English teacher, sick in both ways, by the way, sick in the ill sense, but also sick in the wizard awesome sense, then you equally are also very cool, because that means that you care about the English language. So I'm so happy to have you here. Equally, at the same time, if you are here and you're thinking, I have no idea what's going on and I'm really, really nervous for my exam and I have no idea, then please subscribe to our YouTube channel. I would love to answer your questions about grammar today, about what we're looking at today. Okay. If you've just entered and all you can see is P, that must be quite confusing for you, and I am sorry, but it will be fine. Okay. We're gonna get through this together. Go team. Okay. So, like we said, remember we are reinforcing the negative here. We are reinforcing our answer to the question that is no. Problems about pollution can't be solved, right? So that means that in our body paragraphs, we are going to continue to reinforce those ideas with our 3 points that have been given, well, 2 of which have been given to us. 1 point we have just had to make up ourselves, okay? So our P, the point, is going to be paraphrased from whatever the examiner has given us, which is transport. So how can we connect transport to the idea that problems about pollution can't be solved? You can be very creative with this and say absolutely anything that you want. I'm going to talk about planes. I'm going to say something like planes or air travel is more popular than ever, which is affecting the environment negatively. Okay, all right. What's your evidence for that? Obviously, I've not talked about all of transport. It's fine. You talk about some transport. I mean, if you want, you could, create an alternative answer to this question that says that all types of transport are affecting the environment. But for me, I've decided that I'm just going to talk about planes today. Please don't be upset. All right. So, what's our evidence? What can we say that perhaps supports this claim that we are making? Any ideas? Any thoughts? Any opinions? What do we think? What do we think? I think that some evidence for this is that, for example, celebrities with private jets are wasting loads of fuel for their tours. That could be a good example. That could be like a really nice example if you can think about like the situation with Taylor Swift. She was pretty bad at that. You know, she was going all over the place in her private jet to different places for her concerts. But equally, you don't have to target a specific celebrity. You don't have to say, "Aha, yeah, I'm going to be really mean to celebrities." You could say something like, um, "Budget airlines like Ryanair, if you're European, shout outs to Ryanair, are uh, incredibly cheap, but what's the situation with Ryanair? What's going on with them? Because they are they have more planes than ever before." I could say something like that. I could also say a completely made up statistic. Okay, so I think it's important that you remember that your evidence could be examples of your point. It could be a personal story or an anecdote from somebody else. It could also be a statistic. There's nothing wrong in an essay of writing like, "Did you know?" Right? You could totally do that. There's not a problem with that whatsoever. Okay? So your evidence here could also be something like, "Did you know that over that I don't know, should we just make up something completely ridiculous that it with the same amount of fuel uh, to power one trip by plane, you could power a bus for 3 years." That is such rubbish. I'm sure that you can all think of better examples. 3 years. Okay, but that might be a bit dramatic. We'll say 3 months. It's an interesting idea, you know. It's a cool thought. This is something that could also appear in a report as a statistic, you know. Now, the difficulty is that we are connecting that idea, and obviously these are all very disjointed because this is just a plan. In your real exam, you will not just be writing disjointed ideas, you will be connecting these thoughts together. But most importantly, you will have this explanation here that answers the question once again, reinforces the no that we do not think that these problems can be solved. Now, how are we going to connect the point that planes exist now, everybody uses them, and that they're using so much energy to the idea that no, problems about pollution can't be solved? Well, I'm going to say that planes and air travel are now integral to society. You know, for example, people live abroad, don't they? If people live abroad, what is going on here? If people live abroad and they have families abroad and they go on holiday, you know, going on holiday and traveling for work um, are more convenient by plane. And so I believe that problems with pollution will never be solved. But look at that. I basically used the same words that were in the question. Now, I don't necessarily want to repeat the same words over and over again, as the question says of, will the problems be solved? No, they won't be solved. No, they won't be solved. No, they won't be solved. But I could find different ways of saying that. So, for example, I might say something like, I believe that problems with pollution um, cannot be improved upon, or that the issues of contaminating the environment will never get better or never change. I can find antonyms and say the opposite, using different words to say the same thing. Okay. So let's talk about rivers and seas. Now, this is an interesting one because I think it's trying to ask us to think of our own idea relating to what has changed over the recent years to affect rivers and seas. So I think that we could talk about littering and dumping of trash that has affected our rivers and affected our seas. So our point could be that people throw, people throw rubbish into the sea and into the river, which, excuse me, I'm dying. People throw rubbish into the sea, which affects the environment poorly. And then we could do a little bit of a logic loop here, and that when we give examples, we could say, and then what happens, and then what happens, and then what happens. And this is a good way of answering this question. So I could say, when a company decides to dump its rubbish or its trash into the ocean, this affects the lives of fish, birds, and all connected life, including humans. No, it also affects our lives. And to connect this idea to the original question of the problems of pollution not being solved, even if we take trash out of the sea or out of the river, there is still plenty of trash that's never going to be taken out of there by now. And we could even say that the damage that has been dealt cannot be undealt. The damage caused by these things, by these situations, cannot be undone. And so, well, therefore, not to repeat myself, therefore, the issues caused by pollution cannot be fixed. Yay! I just put the same thing in different words, right? Cool. My final point is Temu. All right. Now, maybe some of you can think of an idea yourselves of how you might answer this question. But just as a reminder, the question is, in your English class, you have been talking about the environment. Write an essay using all of the notes and give reasons for your point of view. Every country in the world has problems with pollution and damage to the environment. Do you think these problems can be solved? Write about transport, rivers and seas, and then our final point that we decided on was Temu. Okay, so what we've written so far is our introduction, which is a definition of pollution. Pollution is caused by people and companies throwing rubbish into different natural environments, which affects animals and destroys nature. In this essay, I will explain why the problems caused by humans can't be solved, and then I've even added an extra thing of by discussing transport, rivers and seas, and popular companies like Temu, which is an extra little detail that you can add, but you don't have to. Then we started our P structures, which is how we take our point. We make a point, that we did here. Planes are more popular than ever. We do some evidence, we reinforce that point, we support the point by giving some theory to back it up, like a personal story or something else. Okay. For example, in this particular case, we decided on this ridiculous statistic that I just invented that I'm not 100% sure is true. Well, in fact, I'm not even 10% sure. I'm not even 1% sure it's true. I just made it up entirely. And then planes and air travel are now integral to society. Going on holiday, traveling for work are more convenient by plane. And so I believe that problems with pollution will never be solved. Look at that. I answer the question in the end of the first body paragraph. And I keep doing that at the end of each body paragraph. Okay. The reason that I'm doing this is because I need to make sure that the examiner knows that I know what I'm talking about. And that's how I do it in the best possible way. Okay. Cool. Very nice. So let's do this Temu one then, shall we? What's my point about Temu? If I'm talking about the problems of pollution not being solved, what do you think I'm going to say about Temu? Well, Temu is a fascinating website. I don't know if you guys have been on it yourselves, but Temu, you can buy things for cheap. Cheap, right? Um, so, for example, on Temu, buy things for extremely low prices, which is another way of saying cheap. Okay? Now, what's next? Evidence. How are we going to reinforce that point? What are we going to say to back it up? Well, I mean, for example, to my knowledge, you can buy things like electronics for 10% of the European market price, which is crazy. Well, that's just my opinion. You don't have to add that part in. But it is madness, that you can spend nothing. I mean, guaranteed the products that you receive are probably nowhere near as good, but still. Excuse me, I'm hanging on by a thread today. And then finally, how are we going to connect that point? How are we going to connect that evidence to the question, which is, can we solve the problems of pollution, which we have to keep reminding ourselves of in order to answer the question effectively. So how are we going to answer, how are we going to link the evidence that we've given to that idea? I would say that companies like Temu are absolutely famous, and removing them would affect the economy very badly, very poorly. So because these companies are too big to fail, society would rather or would prefer to destroy the environment over paying more for products. Okay? So there we go. We have our introduction. We have our body. We have made points. We have basically ticked all the boxes for the examiners to make sure that we get all of the available points for content. I'll leave communicative achievement up to you guys to make sure that you don't shorten words, that you don't put emojis in your essays. Just kidding. I'm sure that you wouldn't do that. And then also, I think it's really important that you guys structure your answers. Make sure you use paragraphs. I know some teachers that will immediately fail a student if they don't put paragraphs, So that is how some Cambridge examiners are looking at your work when you give them a big poo stain of stuff, a word vomit, if you will. They want to be able to understand your writing, so make it easy for them. Split everything into paragraphs. This is a paragraph, this is a paragraph, this is a paragraph, your introduction's a paragraph, and then your conclusion is a paragraph. Now, I have a really nice expression that I like to use in my conclusions that I'm going to tell you now. So we've already answered the question 3 different times, right? For example, here, society would prefer to destroy the environment over paying more for products is another way of answering that question of, can we solve the problems of pollution? So we've really supported ourselves at every single part of the essay. We've reinforced our opinion in the introduction. We've made sure that the body is very, very clear with plenty of examples. And now our conclusion is going to say, for all of the reasons mentioned above, I believe, and then you reinforce your answer. So, how many times have you answered the question? You have answered the question a total of 5 times in the essay. Okay? 5 whole crazy times. A lot of my students say to me, but Emily, why don't I just save it for the end? It's like the most important thing. But imagine that somebody sent you a really, really long message. Would they put the most important information at the end of that message? No. No, of course they wouldn't. What do you, it's madness. Are you actually kidding me? Right? You have to make sure that that information goes at the beginning, in the middle, at the end in the right place. So at the end of each paragraph, okay? To keep connecting your thoughts and to keep connecting your ideas with the question at hand. And that is the best way to get the maximum amount of points for your writing exam. All right? All right. So I'm gonna take a chill pill for a couple of minutes. If anybody has any questions or any sort of messages, maybe you love me and miss me dearly and you want to put a little message in the chat because you think I'm fantastic, please do. That's great. I'm gonna blow my nose. I promise not to leave my microphone on, guys. My coffee is cold now. That's your fault. I'm just kidding, it's my fault. I said that I was gonna spend the next 2 hours yapping away like a fool, so this is what I get. This is what I sign up for. Um, I hope, for the sake of everybody here, that you all have good exam-related experiences, and I hope that it all goes well. But if you are in the exam and you're feeling a bit nervous, please don't. I'll tell you a fun story. If the guy from the listening question's still here, I'm going to tell you a fun story, embarrassing exam story. Are you ready? Story time. I cried. I cried in my listening exam because uh, because I didn't think that I had the answers right. You know? That's it, really. Like, I was doing the listening exam. This is B2 Spanish, by the way, so frankly, there was no excuse. I had been living in Spain at this point for a year, and I rather foolishly thought, I don't need to prepare for the exam. What are you talking about? It's going to be fine. And then I didn't prepare for the exam, and then I went into the exam, and I was not prepared, and I cried. Basically, effectively, what happened was is that um, in the Instituto Cervantes, you have a system where you have to do the exam with multiple accents, right? So you have to listen to people. Microphone's not working. You have to listen to people from like Argentina or like Mexico or the Lord knows where, it's all of these different types of accents. So I was not prepared for that. So when I was listening to all of these different people, I just started crying, you know. I finished the exam and I passed it in the end, which is why I'm telling you this. Because maybe you think that your exam went really badly, but actually it didn't. Wait, okay, I see we have a message. Hi. Oh, hi, Mohammed. How are you? I'm good, thank you. If you've got a question, go ahead and leave it in the chat, okay? We are now in the section of this particular it's not really a call, this particular meeting where I am open to all grammar-related questions. This is our grammar Q&A section. Okay, so if you have any doubts about grammar, you have the next 20 minutes to ask me as many things as you can think of, okay? Or if you want some more embarrassing stories from my exam experiences, then you can also ask me for some more of those because my goodness, I have plenty. This is, exams are the bane of life, I would say. They are the worst, which is why I'm here to try and help you as much as I possibly can. Okay. So, uh, while I'm waiting for people to ask me different questions, I'm just going to get rolling with some grammar stuff of my own. Like I said, if you're just joining, I have a cold today, so please don't be mean. Okay. And all of the materials that you can see here, I will put in Google Drive. And if anybody would like access to them, they can contact us on Instagram and I will send you the link. No problemo. Okay. In fact, for the sake of today, I might even just leave the link in the description. I don't know. I haven't really decided yet. So, um, today, because I made a meme about it. I don't know if you guys saw the meme that I made about it. I made a meme about the difference between who, whom, and whose. Okay. And I was wondering if anybody was curious about what the difference is. So that's what we're going to talk about for the last 15 minutes today. Just because, you know, it sucks. That is actually quite a difficult grammar topic. But if you may remember, the joke that I made was the fact that English people often don't know the difference, you know? So basically, that's what we're going to look at now. Who, whom, and whose. As all of the teacher things go, I'm quite a big fan at the moment of what's it called? Italics. I don't know why. I'm such a big fan of italics. How weird is that, right? I'm into it. So if you don't like it, then you can edit it. I'll make the document editable so you can just so that you can change the italics. But anyways, let's talk about who, whom, and whose. Now, these are all examples of something called relative pronouns. So you may have seen relative pronouns in the past when you are trying to extend the length of a sentence to make it more perhaps how might we put that into words to make it more complex? So you might have a sentence like this: "My dad is a police officer. He is coming home at 7 p.m. today." Right? These two pieces of information that aren't really very connected to each other, but they are two simple sentences. So if we want to make them longer, if we want to make this into one long sentence, I might say this: My dad, who is a police officer, is coming home at 7 p.m. today. Okay, that's your, relative pronoun structure with the word who. And if anybody who is studying um, defining and non-defining relative clauses could tell me if it's a defining clause or a non-defining clause, that would also be really cool. However, if you're not sure, I will tell you that it is a non-defining relative clause because it doesn't define my dad. In fact, I don't actually need to define my dad because there's only one person who can be my dad, right? So it's just my dad. Okay. So, yeah, very good. This is how we use relative pronouns, but a lot of people find it difficult to identify when to use who, when to use whom, and when to use whose. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So, this is for relative pronouns, but it is also for questions and things like that too. So, who, generally speaking, is for subject. So, for example, the sentence that we just had of my dad, who is a police officer, the word who refers to dad, who is the subject, right? So, for example, I might say something like, Who gave you that beautiful necklace? Okay. And the way that we can tell if the answer is who is by when we write the answer, I could say, "Oh, John gave it to me." Is John the subject of the question? Yes, John is the who. And if John is the subject, then we know that who is the correct answer. Okay? I just made up John, by the way. John's not like a real person. You can make up somebody to get these answers right. Okay? So, for example, if I said, like, who peed on the carpet? Look, when you're an English teacher, it's hard to think of examples, okay? I don't always sit here and sort of shuffle through excellent examples exclusively. Who peed on the carpet is what you're gonna get, all right? I'm a who peed on the carpet level of teacher. What's the answer gonna be? The cat. peed on the carpet, right? So that means that if the subject is the answer to the question of who, then we need the word who and not whom or whose or anything like that, okay? The cat peed on the carpet. You're so welcome, guys. Now, the question is, when do we use the word whom? I think these sentences are pretty easy for you guys. But the question is, when do we use this word whom? Whom kind of sucks for that reason, because it is quite hard to know when to use it or when not to use it. So, whom? Whom works like this. When we use whom to refer to objects in sentences. So, for example, instead of saying something like, who do you like? I shouldn't actually say that because technically it's not good grammar, because my answer to the question is going to be something like this. I like John because he gave me a necklace, right? Who? Not quite right. It should be, whom do you like, right? I like John because John is the object of the sentence. Okay? Oh, Mohammed, it's you again. Are you still working as an English teacher online? You know it, baby. Mohammed, do I know you? Surely not. If so, if you are the Mohammed that I'm thinking of, long time no see, dude. Nice to hear from you again. How's everything going? You can send me a message on ClassGap if you want. I don't bite. So, if your response to the question is an object that is the answer of the question of whom, then you know that it's going to be whom and not who. Okay. So, for example, a really good trick for this that one of my students pointed out recently is that you can do this with, especially with prepositions, right? Because in Spanish, you would require some form of preposition to perhaps answer this a question like this. So, for example, a lot of English people will probably write a question like, "Who did you go out with last night?" And we'll get rid of the last night just for argument. Who did you go out with? I went out with James. I went out with James. Who did you go out with? If James is the answer to the question and he is the object, then the answer must be whom. Whom did you go out with? Not who did you go out with? Okay? Because who is used only for subjects. Now, a lot of you may think, who did you go out with is absolutely grammatically fine. And I agree. It is also acceptable to say, who did you go out with? It's just some people will correct you. These people, we would call them the grammar police because they are obsessed with perfect grammar. I don't know if you guys knew this. The name of my channel is the Grammar Police, but it's got nothing to do with the fact that I am obsessed with grammar. It's just because I enjoy teaching it. Although I have to say it has given us quite a bad reputation so far. So that's quite problematic in that sense. But like I said, it is completely acceptable to say who did you go out with instead of whom did you go out with? Whom did you go out with? And the reason for that is because English people don't know the difference between who and whom. Go out and ask your average, you know, uh, English person, and they'll go, "What? I have no idea what you're talking about." Okay? What's a whom? I'm just kidding. They will know, but they'll not know when to use it. Okay? Oh, hey. Oh, Mohammed, it is you. Oh, bless you. I don't want to like release super personal information, but I hope your family's okay. It's so nice to hear from you again. Um, yeah, I hope you're enjoying this session of just listening to me for no particular reason. I hope you've been learning your English since then. Got my eyes on you, Mohammed. All right. But yeah, it is a treat to hear from you again, and I'm glad that you're here. What a luxury. What a great thing to see. Okay, finally then we're going to talk about whose, and then we're going to wind this thing down, okay? So whose is for possession. And a good way and a good trick to see if whose is necessary is that the answer to a potential whose question would be something like, it's John's, it's belonging to John's, or it's Emily's. You know, it's Emily's car, it's Emily's dinosaur, it's Emily's pet sponge, right? So whose always goes with nouns. Okay, so we might say something like this. Whose dog is peeing on the floor? There's a lot. Look, we talked about pee earlier today. It's just I've got pee on the mind. Okay, whose dog is peeing? Oh my goodness, whose dog is peeing on the floor? And then my answer to the question might be mine, right? My dog. Possession. So because I'm using a possessive here, I can tell that the answer is going to be, or the question is going to be whose. I wouldn't say who is dog is peeing on the floor. This is something that a lot of people get confused. Whose is not the same as whose, like this. Who apostrophe S is the same as who is. So I might say something like, who's calling me? And that's who is calling me, not who's calling me. Like the calling belongs to the person. That doesn't make any sense. Whenever you see whose, you're going to see it with a singular or a plural noun. Okay? Otherwise, it just doesn't make any dang sense. All right. So to finish up today, and because I can see that there's a few people in the chat, and maybe you might want to participate and have some fun with me. Let's play a game. Shall we do it? I don't see why not. It's nice to see that people are so interested in making sure that they are practicing their English, even on a Sunday. Can't believe it myself. If I were you guys, I would just be taking a break. Then again, actually, that's not 100% true, is it? Because I'm sat here in on a live on YouTube teaching you English instead of, I don't know, watching a movie. um, oh, okay. Here's what we're going to do then. If you want to join in, you absolutely can. I'm going to give you all 5 minutes to join in. I'm going to copy the link and I'm going to put it in the chat. Here you go, everybody. And we're going to play a little Blook It. Can you believe it? Some of my students who know me will know that Blook It is one of my favorite things to play with. So let's do it. Okay. I'm actually surprised that I've not like passed away in the middle of this this live today. Because man, I am tired. I don't know about you guys. Sometimes I just think it's this time of year. Just super sleepy, you know? Even if nobody joins in, I'm still gonna be doing this, by the way, so don't be upset if you don't join in. I'm not super heartbroken about it. If somebody does join in, that would be great. I'm just kidding. 29081. Okay, that's me. I don't want to be a giraffe though. I want to be somebody cooler. What can I be? What's teachery? A walrus. Perfect. If you're gonna join in, please do. You know, that'd be really awesome. I'll give you a few more minutes. It's been great to talk to you guys about grammar for the past 2 hours. One of my greatest passions, as you all are intimately aware. Okay, I'll give you a couple more minutes to get connected. Yeah, ladies and germs, I'll give you one more minute. Okay. When the time's up, the time's up, okay? I'm actually really sorry, I meant to mute myself. Ah, ah. This is a message for Anna, by the way. You're editing this, I'm not touching it. Afterwards. I refuse. So, I was expecting uh, Anna to be really upset about that. Well, I should be expecting Anna to be upset about that. It will be good fun, though, trust me. Okay, I think about 5 minutes has passed, so let's get into it, guys. Let's go. Let's get after it, as they say. All right, let's go. Remember, you can join in if you feel that way inclined. Nope. All right. Uh, I'm a genius, guys. I'm a genius. I can't believe it. I got it right. Amazing. Can you believe it? Who wrote that beautiful love poem? Because the response would then be with a subject. Ooh, now we have a noun. So because we have a noun, I'm going to say that it's whose cars are these? To whom do the cars belong? If it's possession, then we're going to use whose. Good job, guys. Good job. And by good job, guys, I mean good job, Emily, because Emily's answering all of these questions like a boss. All right. Ooh. We have another noun after. So, whose pencil? Because we want to say, to whom does this pencil belong? It is another possession. It's Emily's pencil. It's John's pencil. All right. Lovely, lovely, lovely. Ooh, okay. So, who gave you this present? The response is going to be like, oh, Jason gave it to me. So it's going to have to be who? Who? So it's the subject, so it has to be who. Okay? Cool, cool, cool. Let's keep going. Very good. Nice and easy peas. Let's keep going. Oh, my next question. Okay, now this one, you should know the answer by now because we have And then a noun, car, whose. If you got it right, give yourself a little internal tick. Tell yourself that you are fantastic. Let's keep going. Oh, look, it's another noun. I wonder what the answer should be. Yes, I am a genius. Once again, I have got it. Woohoo. Fabulous. Who do you want to meet? Who do you want to meet? Well, you'll remember that I said that who is okay, right? But we know that the answer of the question would be an object, so the question should be whom. I want to meet Taylor Swift. Taylor Swift is the object, so we know that it's going to be whom. Okay? Ooh, are you talking about? I'm talking about Stacy. Stacy is the object because I am the subject, so it has to be whom. Okay, nice. Let's keep it rolling. If you want to join in, there's still plenty of time. Dictionary is on the table. Now, again, we have another thing. So because we have a thing that is immediately after the question, we can say whose dictionary is on the table. Fantastic. I think we can speed up a little bit here. Ooh. Jim was talking to Stacy. I've become obsessed with Stacy as an example now. So if Stacy is the object, then it must be whom, right? Come on, guys, we're getting the hang of it. Good job. Made this cake. I made this cake. Well, I am the who, so I am the subject, so it must be who. Okay, nice. I'm a languages wizard. Are you voting for? Now, like I said, one of my students gave us a cool trick, which is, oh, we'll have a little preposition there. Voting for someone. Who? So we know that it must be whom. Cool. Thank you to my student for the cool trick. Wants an apple. Who, I think, wants an apple? Okay, we're almost a quarter left. Gave you permission, but the police gave me permission, so the police are the subject, so it's who. Good. And going to the movies with. Now we have the word with, which is another preposition, so it must be whom. But even if we answer the question, I'm going to the movies with my boyfriend would be the object, right? It's kind of harsh to refer to your boyfriend as an object, but when you're learning about grammar, it's just what you have to do, okay? Won the game. I think it's going to be who won the game. Okay, very good. I'm saying very good like anybody else is participating. Very good. The house did they see? Now, this goes with a noun, and so we know that it's going to be whose. Whose house did they see? Okay. Well done, everybody. You're all such geniuses. I know you're answering at home. Jacket is on the floor. Again, it goes with a noun, so it's going to be whose. Bang. Sorted. Finally, we have one more question. Are we going to get it right? I don't know. Is your favorite actor? My favorite actor is Stacy. Now this is going to be, again, it is copulative. So I would say that the correct answer is who. What do you mean? Oh, I didn't press it fast enough. That's a little bit embarrassing, actually. But anyways, we got it. Who is your favorite actor? Now, I got 19 out of 19 questions right because I didn't click that last one in time because I'm an idiot. But were you counting how many you got right at home? I bet you got them all. You're a genius, all right? I believe in you, and I think you're fantastic. Now, before we go, very quickly, I'd like to say thank you to anybody who was watching or who is watching the recording now. And I wish you the very best of luck. Lots and lots of hugs, plenty of pats on the back and moral support, and no kisses though, for anybody who is doing the exam at some point in the future. Um, Once again, all of the practice materials that we have used today will be available in this particular Google Drive. So if you would like to use this stuff to practice, please, please, pretty please, with cheese, send us a message on Instagram, send us a message on LinkedIn, and we will send you the link. And after a few days, I'll put this in the description of the video of the recording too. Again, as always, bring us some questions, bring us your doubts, and thank you so much for coming. All right, have a great evening, and I will see you around, losers. Bye.